There were 2 dinner plates still soaking in the sink. The dishwasher was halfway through its cycle. And my wife's closet. It was open, like she left in a rush, like she just grabbed the first dress that reminded her she wasn't mine anymore. That's how it started. No screaming. No, we need to talk. Just a cold half-glass of Pinot Grigio on the counter, my leftover lasagna congealing in the pan, and her phone charger missing from the wall. I stood there in silence, staring at the blinking green light on the dishwasher. I don't know why, but that light made me angrier than anything else. We'd had dinner an hour earlier. She laughed at my dumb story about the neighbor's cat. She complimented my cooking. She even kissed me on the cheek when I cleared the table. And then, she left. A single text came through 10 minutes later. Don't freak out. I'm okay. Just need to breathe. With Ryan. Ryan. I hadn't heard that name in 4 years. Her ex. The chaos before the calm. The mistake she swore she'd never repeat. I sat down in the living room, trying to process it. There was still steam rising from her tea. That's when the panic hit. Not rage. Not sadness. Just humiliation. Like I was the last one to know a joke had already been played. But here's the twist. This wasn't the first time she'd left. It was just the first time I didn't chase her. Because 10 minutes after that message, I sent a reply that changed everything. If you felt more alive with him, then go be his problem again. She didn't answer. But at 2:19 a.m., the call started. And she hasn't stopped since. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying. Not at first. I wish it had been that simple. No. I stayed up because I kept trying to convince myself that this was just a dramatic phase. That she'd walk through the door by morning, annoyed at herself for slipping into nostalgia, pretending it didn't mean anything. But the calls at 2:19 a.m., they shattered that illusion. The first call rang twice, then stopped. The second lasted longer. By the third, I answered, and didn't say a word. Curtis, she whispered. She sounded out of breath, like she'd been running, or crying, or both. I didn't answer. I just needed to think, she said. That's all. It got messy, okay? But nothing happened. Not like that. The classic. Not like that. I finally spoke. You left in the middle of dinner. For your ex. And now you're telling me it's not what it looks like? She started talking fast. Too fast. It was just a drive. I needed to feel something. We didn't even. I kissed him, but that's. I hung up. Not dramatically. Not to be cruel. I just couldn't do it. My ears started ringing, and her voice felt like it was drilling through my skull. I sat on the edge of the bed and realized she'd taken her favorite pillow. She hadn't even packed an overnight bag. Just a pillow and her charger. She planned it. The thing is, I always knew I wasn't the guy she dreamed about when she closed her eyes at night. I knew I wasn't exciting or unpredictable. I'd catch her scrolling through her old Instagram photos, the ones from her wild years, before she archived them all. The parties, the tattoos she now hides, the shirtless guys who made her laugh until 4 a.m. One of them was Ryan. She once told me, back when we first moved in together, Ryan was a disaster, but he made everything feel electric. And me? I was steady. I was safe. Well, steady just got left behind with a cold plate of lasagna. The next morning, she texted again. I didn't respond. By noon, she was calling my sister. Then my mom. Then my boss. Yeah, she called my boss. Curtis didn't come to work today, she told him. I'm worried about him. Worried. About me. From the guy she left me for. That's when I knew she wasn't calling because she missed me. She was calling because she thought I'd unravel without her. That I'd sit in a heap of laundry sobbing to sad Spotify playlists until she returned to find me broken and grateful for her forgiveness. But I didn't unravel. I unplugged the landline, turned off my phone, and I sat in that silence for the first time in 6 years. And for once, it didn't feel empty. It felt like peace. She walked through the front door like it was still hers. I was sitting on the couch, barefoot, eating cereal out of a mixing bowl, still in the same shirt I'd worn when she left. She looked at me, hair messy, mascara smudged, keys dangling from her fingers, and I swear, she gave me this soft little smile, like we were in the middle of some harmless argument and she just needed a walk to cool off. Eliza, I said, slowly standing up. Why are you here? She blinked like I was the unreasonable one. Curtis, I live here. No apology. No explanation. No, I'm sorry for disappearing into the night with my ex while you were cleaning dishes. Just a tired sigh and a request for space. That's when I noticed it. She didn't bring a bag. Just her purse and that stupid pillow. She really thought she could slide back into my life like a bookmark in a chapter she hadn't finished reading. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. But I did something worse. I said nothing. Just let her walk past me, into our bedroom, like she still belonged there. That night, she tried to play normal. She cooked pasta, asked if I wanted to watch something, made stupid small talk like, did the neighbor finally mow his lawn? Like we were back to being Curtis and Eliza, boring, safe, quiet Curtis and impulsive, restless Eliza. But I wasn't playing along anymore. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I just stared at her, not like a husband, like a stranger trying to figure out how a ghost ended up in his house. And then, finally, she snapped. Are you really going to keep punishing me for one mistake? That word again, mistake. Like she accidentally spilled wine on the couch. Like she didn't deliberately leave to go feel alive with someone who used to take body shots off her at pool parties. I stood up. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And now I'm making mine. She looked nervous for the first time. What does that mean? I walked into the bedroom, pulled out a folder I'd hidden behind the dresser, handed it to her. Inside was a list, a long, painfully detailed list of every login she'd forgotten I had access to. Our shared banking history, her location history, a calendar she once synced with mine by accident, and a printed transcript of a conversation she'd had with Ryan the day before she left, where she said she might pretend to cry to soften Curtis up. Her hand shook as she held the papers. I'm not yelling, I said. I'm not breaking anything. I'm just documenting everything you think I didn't see. Her eyes filled with panic. Curtis, please don't do this. But the thing is, I already had. Because earlier that day, while she was off playing house with her ex, I'd contacted a lawyer. Nothing aggressive. Nothing dramatic. Just a quiet consultation. A plan. A slow burn. She wasn't just going to walk back into my life like she never left. She was going to learn what it felt like to lose something slowly. Because I was done being the boring one. The next morning, she tried to make coffee like everything was fine. Like I hadn't handed her proof that she'd planned to manipulate me. Like she hadn't emotionally packed her bags weeks before she physically did. She hummed while the kettle boiled. Hummed. As if we were in some quirky marriage sitcom, and I was just the stubborn husband who'd eventually cave and beg for forgiveness for being too cold. But I didn't speak. I didn't even look at her. I left for work without a word. What she didn't know was that I wasn't going to work. I took the day off. I had appointments. First stop, the bank. Second, the storage unit I'd quietly rented a week ago when things first started feeling wrong. Third, my attorney's office. By noon, our joint savings account was separated. Not closed. I'm not stupid, but split, perfectly within legal limits. I'd also had the utilities updated to accounts under my name only. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was just preparation. And then came the hardest part. I drafted a letter to her parents. Not to expose her. Not to humiliate her. Just the truth. A calm, measured explanation of what happened. I told them she'd left to stay with an ex, that she'd come back, but things were no longer stable, and I wanted them to know. If she reached out crying, I wasn't kicking her out. I was just done being the background noise to her chaos. When I came home that evening, she was sitting on the couch, holding the list I'd given her the night before like it was a snake that might bite her again. She looked smaller, like her skin didn't quite fit anymore. I didn't cheat, she said softly. I sat across from her. You ran to him, kissed him, lied to me, tried to manipulate me. So honestly, Eliza, it doesn't really matter where your underwear ended up. She flinched. Silence fell between us again. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was surgical. It was the sound of a connection being cut, inch by inch, and both of us knew it. Then she tried to pull the oldest move in her playbook. She stood up, walked over, sat beside me, and said, maybe we just need a weekend away. Clear our heads. A weekend away. After vanishing for 2 days with Ryan, she wanted to hit reset with a wine tasting and a hot tub. I almost laughed. Instead, I stood up, walked to the bedroom, and came back with my pillow and my blanket. You can have the bed, I said. I'll take the couch, just until the paperwork's ready. She blinked. What paperwork? I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because the silence said everything now. And this time, she didn't hum. She sat in the dark kitchen long after I lay down, probably trying to figure out how I'd become the one she couldn't read anymore. And for the first time in this entire disaster, I didn't feel like the boring one. I felt like the storm. The cracks began to show 2 days later, not in our marriage. Those were already wide open, but in her. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. But I watched her carefully, the way you watch a candle burn unevenly, leaning closer and closer to collapse. She was pacing more, not in a normal way, in that unsettled, guilty way, like the silence in the house was suddenly too loud. She started asking me if I was okay every time I walked by. She made breakfast even when I said I wasn't hungry. She offered to do my laundry, then folded it wrong. The kind of wrong that said she hadn't done it in months. She even bought me a new toothbrush, the same brand I already had, like that would undo anything. And still, I said nothing. Because every time I looked at her, all I saw was that blinking green light from the dishwasher the night she left. It played over and over in my mind like a metronome, steady, pulsing, mocking me with how ordinary the night had seemed before she blew our life apart. Then it happened. She called Ryan. She didn't know I was home. I'd come back early from work, parked 2 streets over, and walked in through the side gate so she wouldn't hear the car. I didn't mean to spy. Honestly, I didn't care anymore. But I needed clarity. I needed to know if she was still tethered to the chaos she once called passion. She was. I heard her from the hallway. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but I caught enough. No, he's being weird now, like scary calm. I don't think he's even mad. That's worse. No, I can't leave yet. He's doing something. I can feel it. She paused. Then, softly, I think he might actually leave me. That's when I turned the corner and looked at her. She jumped, phone slipping from her hand, the screen still lit with Ryan's name. She stared at me, her face pale like she'd seen something she couldn't undo. You were spying? She said, trying to sound offended. No, I said. I was listening. She started to speak, but I cut her off. You've made your choices, Eliza. And now I'm making mine. I'm not yelling. I'm not begging. But I'm not staying. I didn't say it to shock her. I said it because it was true. She reached for me then, desperate, like the reality had finally hit. Curtis, don't do this. I messed up, but we can still fix it. You don't just throw away 6 years. No, I said, stepping back. But you did. And for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. No tears. No anger. Just a long, aching silence between 2 people who finally saw each other clearly and didn't like what they saw. I walked out that night. Not far. Just to the car. But this time, she was the one standing in the doorway, watching someone leave. And I didn't look back. Eliza always thought silence meant weakness. That the quieter I got, the closer I was to breaking. But that's because she never really paid attention. She never realized that the man she once called boring was actually just observant. And by the time she noticed I wasn't reacting, it was because I'd already started moving. The week after I walked out, I didn't go far, just to a furnished rental across town that I paid for in cash. No big announcement. No social media drama. I just vanished, quietly. And I left her in a house that had my name on the deed, but suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. That's when the messages started flooding in. Not just from Eliza, but from her friends. People who once smiled at me during dinner parties, who toasted our anniversary, were now sending me passive-aggressive texts like, she's been through a lot lately. Maybe don't make it worse. And, be the bigger person, Curtis. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was angry, but because I wanted them all to speak before they realized what was coming. Because here's what Eliza didn't know. I hadn't just spoken to a lawyer. I'd spoken to her employer. See, while she was out getting closure with Ryan, she forgot that her yoga studio ran most of its brand deals and sponsorships through our LLC, the one we formed 2 years ago for tax reasons. My name was still on the paperwork, and while I had zero interest in yoga, I did have full administrative access to all the contracts, payout accounts, and emails linked to the business backend. I didn't touch a cent. I didn't change a password. All I did was send a message, polite, professional, informing her sponsors that I'd be removing myself from the company, and if there were any legal liabilities or issues with misrepresentation, they could reach me directly. That's all it took. The next day, she showed up outside my rental. She didn't knock. She just stood there, shoulders slumped, makeup smudged, holding a bottle of whiskey she knew I liked, the same one I used to save for New Year's. I just want to talk, she said. I opened the door halfway. About what? She didn't have a plan. She just stared at me like I was supposed to fill the silence for her. So I did. I didn't burn anything down, I told her. I didn't post screenshots. I didn't slash your tires or tell your parents. I just took away the version of me you took for granted. Her lip trembled. You're not like this. You never knew what I was like, I said. You just knew I wouldn't leave. She stepped forward, tried to hand me the bottle. I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a decision. And now I'm making mine. Then I closed the door. Softly. But finally, I stood there behind it, my heart racing, knees weak, because I wasn't some movie hero. I was just a guy who had finally stopped asking himself if he was enough for someone who never appreciated what she had. And this time, she was the one left on the outside, holding a gift for a man who didn't exist anymore. The first time I realized she was trying to rewrite the story was when my cousin Riley messaged me. Dude, what happened? You left her for someone else? I sat there in the coffee shop, reading the message over and over, my hands actually shaking. I hadn't spoken to anyone about what happened. Not in detail. I didn't want to turn it into gossip. But Eliza was doing what she always did, playing the part of the victim in a story where she had been the arsonist. By the end of that day, I'd gotten 3 more texts. One from a mutual friend asking if I was okay after cheating, another from her sister, telling me how cruel I'd been, and the worst one, from my own mother. Not accusing me, but clearly confused. Hesitant. Like she didn't know which version to believe. I didn't lose my temper, but something in me finally snapped. I went home, pulled out my old laptop, and opened the folder I'd labeled months ago, Eliza_just in case. Inside were screenshots, text logs, timestamped messages, even the synced GPS history from the day she left, when she claimed she was just driving around, yet clearly pinged her location outside Ryan's apartment for nearly 5 hours. I never planned to use it. I told myself I'd never be that guy, but I wasn't going to let her bury me under a lie. So I wrote a letter. A calm, devastatingly honest letter. I sent it to exactly 7 people, the 7 people she'd clearly tried to sway. I didn't call her names. I didn't rant. I just told the truth. Word for word. No embellishments. No revenge. Just reality. And then, silence. Not from them. From her. Because within hours, I know she started getting the calls. The texts. The "what is this?" messages that hit like a slow landslide. I know because she tried to call me 3 times that night. I didn't answer. Then she sent a voice message, and I played it once. Just once. She was sobbing. Not the performative kind. The kind that comes when the lies finally collapse and you're not ready to deal with the fallout. You told them everything, she cried. You were never supposed to. Curtis, I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. I just didn't want to lose everyone. But that's the thing. She didn't lose everyone because she left me. She lost them because she tried to rewrite the ending and pretend the fire hadn't started in her hands. The next morning, I got a delivery. A box. No return address. Inside was a framed photo of us from 2 years ago, taken at her sister's wedding. We looked happy in it. I had my hand around her waist. She was laughing into my neck. Taped to the back was a sticky note in her handwriting. I felt alive that day. I just forgot what real love looked like. That night, I stared at the photo for a long time. And then I put it back in the box. Because the man in that picture wasn't me anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. A month passed before I saw her again. Not by choice. I was picking up groceries, just regular stuff. Nothing dramatic. And she was 2 aisles over, holding a carton of almond milk and looking like she hadn't slept in days. She saw me before I saw her. And when our eyes met, she froze, like she wanted to melt into the floor. I didn't turn away. I didn't smile either. I just nodded. Small, quiet, and kept walking. She followed me. We stood near the self-checkout, both pretending we didn't feel the weight of 6 years pressing down on a 30-second interaction. Finally, she spoke. Curtis, she said, her voice barely holding together. Can we talk? Just once. Somewhere quiet. Part of me wanted to say no, to walk away and never look back. But something in her face told me this wasn't about reconciliation. She wasn't asking for another chance. She was asking for the last word, the kind we never got to have. So we sat outside in the parking lot, on the edge of a planter box, while the sun went down behind a row of tired pine trees and people pushed carts filled with frozen dinners and paper towels. She took a long breath. I thought leaving would make me feel free, but I just felt stupid and empty. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve what I did after, either. I didn't interrupt. I let her finish. I lied to myself for a long time. Told myself I needed excitement. Passion. Something bigger than stability. But all I did was blow up the one thing that was ever actually safe. I'm sorry, Curtis. For all of it. And for the first time since she left, I didn't feel angry. Or bitter. Or hollow. I just felt done. Not in a cruel way. In a peaceful way. Like the chapter had finally turned itself. I believe you, I said. And I forgive you. But that version of us, it's gone. She nodded. She already knew. We said goodbye in the parking lot. No tears. No drama. Just two people closing a book they'd both outgrown. That night, I went home to my tiny rental and opened the windows for the first time. I turned on music. Not sad music, just normal music, and cooked myself dinner without thinking about how quiet the table was. And later, I did something I hadn't done in years. I laughed. Not because something was funny, but because I suddenly realized that I wasn't lonely anymore. I was free. 2 weeks later, I went on a walk through the city. No plan. No destination. Just breathing again. That's when I met someone. She was standing outside a bookstore arguing with her dog, who had decided the sidewalk was a great place to stage a sit-in protest. She laughed when I offered to help. And somehow, we ended up grabbing coffee. Nothing intense. Just real. Honest. Light. Her name's Marin. She's nothing like Eliza. And that's the point.